Hi, I'm Tony Schrader, Chairman of the Putnam County Republican Party. I wanted to welcome you to another edition of Putnam County GOPTV. We're always glad to have new faces and people that we think you ought to know about joining us. And we have one today, our friend Craig Riedel, State Representative for the 82nd District. He represents counties of Defiance, Paulding, Van Wert, part of Auglaize County.
Yep.
Our neighbors to the west, very much like us. They can't all be in Putnam County, so we're glad to have Craig aboard. It's a pleasure to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Yep. So we'll talk about a few things.
Right.
Wanted to introduce you a little bit to Putnam County.
Yep.
I read your bio, so I'm not an expert on Craig Riedel, but you're from Attica originally. Yep. You were in business in a long time in Defiance County before you decided to go to the House.
Yep.
And had a smashing campaign, won a big victory there when you first got elected.
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago already. Yeah.
And you're in your second term now.
I am.
Yes.
I am. Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Well, one of the reasons we wanted to talk right now in particular is the response of the state of Ohio to the COVID-19 virus. And we've been sharing some of the pieces you've had up on social media, some of the newspaper pieces as well. You've been a strong leader in Northwest Ohio. Not only on this issue, on a bunch of issues, but in particularly in response to what rural Ohio should be thinking about with the COVID-19 virus and what the state's response is. I wondered if you could tell us some of the actions that you've been involved in, some of what the General Assembly is doing associated with that right now.
Yeah, so, Tony, first, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it, yeah. So, you know, we've been in this state of emergency. I think the governor declared that back on March 9th. And then I think the first stay-at-home order was executed March 22nd or 23rd. And, you know, for the first 3-4 weeks, I know that there was a lot of uncertainties, a lot of things that, I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know at that point. The governor was having to make a lot of tough decisions, and I think, you know, for those first 3 or 4 weeks, I think that for the most part, he probably made most of the right decisions. For me personally, it was right about Easter, and it was something I felt that, you know, we had enough data at that point. We were about 4 weeks into this. We knew who the virus was going after. We knew it was going after older people with underlying health conditions. And I just felt like that the governor needed to start making a change in his approach to things. And that's about when I actually came out. I think it was actually April the 13th. It was the day after Easter when I came out and publicly stated that I felt that it was time to start opening up our economy again. And for me, I'm pro-life to the tilt, to the fullest. There is not a legislator down in Columbus that's any more pro-life than I am. There are other legislators that are as much pro-life as I am, but no, I'm not going to let anyone be more pro-life than I.
Sure.
But when you look at this, and I've been asked about this, you know, Craig, aren't you pro-life? Well, yes, I am. If we would allow this shutdown to go on any further or be any more severe, the consequences from an economic standpoint and the repercussions from a collapsed economy, and I'm describing depression, which leads to suicide, loss of jobs permanently, that could lead, you know, someone's going to lose their health insurance. So now someone decides not to go have a mammogram done or a colonoscopy or a simple tooth infection that it not treated properly can lead to death. You know, that can, you know, get into your blood, and before you know it, you have heart issues. And we know those things are very realistic, that can really happen. Drug addiction, alcoholism, all these things can lead to death. And, you know, I said it all along, and you know, I heard the president say it, that, you know, we can't allow this cure or the cure to be worse than the disease itself.
Right, exactly.
And it was clear to me that that's the path we were on. And so it was at that time when I came out And really at that point there was only maybe 2 or 3 legislators who'd actually came out in opposition to the governor on this position, publicly speaking. And then at that point, I just it kind of caught fire, and what I mean is, you know, it started to build momentum. And it's one of those things that once one person steps up and shows some courage, because when you're going up against the governor, I mean, he's in our party,
right?
And,
exactly.
And I respect the governor, and all of my communication and correspondence has been in a respectful way, but it needed to be done,
right?
And it had to be done, and it had to be said. So at this point in time, Tony, there's probably maybe 20 to 25, 20 state representatives who have been very outspoken on this, in agreement with me that, you know, we got to get things opened up. Right. In the Senate, there's probably a good 10 to 12 senators that feel the same way. I'm convinced, I'm absolutely convinced that the pressure that we've mounted on the governor over the last 3 to 4 weeks has had an impact.
It's made a difference. It's
made a difference, because I think I first noticed it probably 4 weeks ago in the press conference the governor was having, in that he just started to become hesitant, and you could tell he was not going to. It just didn't seem he was going to take his foot off the pedal.
Right. And
you know, we still have a stay at safe order. It's just been rephrased. Ohio's protecting Ohioans. But we got to get this order lifted,
right?
Because when our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, I don't think they ever envisioned this. As a matter of fact, this is what they were trying to get away from
in the first place.
That's why they came to the United States and got out of England. You know, it just, whether you feel the governor's done a good job or not. And I'll say he did a good job initially, but has not done so well the last 3 or 4 weeks. But regardless, he is one person. He's a man.
Right.
He's flesh and blood like all of us, and he's prone to make mistakes.
Right.
As hard as he tries not to, he's prone to. And our founding fathers, to their genius and divine intervention, created a government that has 3 equal branches. And thank goodness. But the governor needs our help.
Exactly.
He needs our help.
Right. Unfortunately,
the laws are set up in Ohio, and they're still set up this way right now, where in this sort of a situation, the General Assembly is essentially blocked out of the conversation.
Yeah.
Literally stiff-armed out of the conversation. So we have desperately been working on the last couple weeks a way to find a way to assert ourselves legislatively back into the conversation.
Right.
And right now there's a bill that is in the Senate. It's Senate Bill 1 that we amended. It's actually a bill that Senator Rob McCulley introduced over a year ago, and the core of the bill deals with regulations, regulatory regulations, and the whole idea behind that is to reduce those rules and regulations, to require state agencies to reduce those. It's a great bill. I support 100%. But we amended that bill 2 weeks ago with an amendment that allows the General Assembly to basically be a part of the conversation. The Director of Health would still be allowed to issue these orders in a pandemic situation like we're in. But what this bill does is it allows, after 14 days, the General Assembly gets to decide whether or not the health order continues or if it ceases.
Right.
So there you go. There's a way for us to get some oversight in the situation. Right. So the bill has been amended. It's been sent back to the Senate. There's some things they're still wanting to work out with it at this point. Actually, today they voted not to concur on it, but for reasons, there's some problems in the language that we didn't see in the House, but hopefully they correct that and we can get this. Now the governor has already said if this goes to him, he's going to veto it. I believe we got the numbers
to be able to
override his veto. Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing we talked a little bit about in preface to this is, you know, Ohio isn't a homogenous state. You know, there are areas of Ohio where the situation with coronavirus was far worse. The Cuyahoga County, Cleveland area in particular. Large parts of rural Ohio have not been affected nearly as badly. I think it's important that the General Assembly is able to weigh in on this to represent constituents that are outside of the metro areas of Ohio.
Yeah.
Because that you set policy, understandably, in the administration level based on a statewide idea, but the General Assembly represents people's various interests, you know,
right.
throughout the state, and particularly
yep.
as affects Northwest Ohio. You mentioned Senator McCauley's legislation. Senator Huffman, I know, has been leading in the Senate on this, in particular to try and get orders related to small businesses. Representative Cross over to our east, others that have been very active in this. And
yeah.
I think that's absolutely critical. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk tonight was to bring this update to people, because it's hard to read through the news and understand what's actually going on in Columbus right now related to this.
Yeah.
And so we applaud you for taking the lead on that and providing that cover. So
I appreciate that. You know, I mentioned it was about Easter time when I decided a lot of praying over it, because I knew it was going to. You know, it was going to put me out there.
Right.
Because at that point there was only maybe one or two other legislators who had said something. Senator Huffman was actually one of the first.
Right.
You know, you do what you feel is right. You know, you have to do what you feel is right. It takes courage. But you know, you made a point there about rural Ohio. You know, we're not having the amount of cases,
the same impact.
Yeah,
exactly.
That you see in the larger metropolitan areas, and
right.
That's one of the things actually I've had, you know, some real issue with the governor over, is that, you know, he's wanted to keep the state in unison. In other words, you know, we're going to do this at the same pace everywhere, and I really take exception with that, because you know, if President Trump would take that same approach.
Right.
I mean, if that were the case, we would be waiting on the state of New York to
get over their issue.
Maybe for the next 2 years.
Exactly right.
And thank goodness President Trump didn't decide to go that route. He's decided to let the states, rightfully so, handle this on their own.
Right.
But could you imagine if we had to wait on New York or some other state that's struggling with this virus? Yeah. Well, my point is, you should use that same approach in the state of Ohio.
Right.
I mean, why should Putnam County, Defiance County, Van Wert County, why should we wait on Cuyahoga or Franklin County, where obviously they're having
the situation's different?
But the governor just, for whatever reason, wasn't able to get over that. Another issue in particular that really grated me is what I consider the governor's unwillingness to consider high school graduation ceremonies in communities and schools that really could pull it off.
Sure.
And you know, we know how to behave around this virus now. There's no reason why a school like Ottawa Glandorf or Kalida or Lincoln View couldn't orchestrate a graduation ceremony and do it safely.
Our superintendent of Ottawa Glandorf Local Schools, Don Horstman, wrote an open letter to the governor basically expressing that over the weekend. And that makes perfect sense. And so, well, and we won't wrap this up entirely, because I'm sure we'll get together again on this, but I wanted to take just a brief segue while we're introducing you to folks. One of the things we've worked with you or talked with you about in particular and tried to offer support on has been, as you mentioned earlier, your avid advocacy for the pro-life movement in Ohio. We talked at some length last year, I recall, about the heartbeat bill, which you were a very strong proponent of, and a couple of other measures. Tell our folks a little bit about some of the legislation you've been involved in associated with
it. So I'm in my second term, all right? I was first elected back in November of 2016, so I'm in my second term. In my first term, we passed a bill that it's a pro-life bill that basically deals with a child, or a woman rather, has a child that's been diagnosed with Down syndrome. Okay, So what this bill would do, or when we passed it, is basically it would make it unlawful. It'd be a felon on a physician who performed an abortion on a woman, knowing that the child had Down syndrome. You know, that could not be the reason to have the abortion.
Right.
And we passed that bill through both chambers, and at the time Governor Kasich did sign it into law. It got struck down, or it's a stay by a federal judge, I believe out of Cincinnati. It tends to be the same particular judge out of Cincinnati.
Yes.
But so it's still there. It's just there's been a stay put on it, which means a pause. But a very good bill. And then you mentioned the heartbeat bill. I'll tell you, Tony, hands down, there will never be another bill that I was most proud of being a part of.
Right.
Okay. It happened quickly in my career as a representative. A year ago is when we passed this. I think it was April of 2019. But there won't be. I don't know, you know, if I do this for another 2 years, or if it's 5 years, whatever it is, there will never be another bill that I'm a part of that I'll be more proud of.
Yeah, that's a real honor.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was really an honor to be there that day, to be able to hit that yes button.
And to cast that vote. Well, and to his credit, Governor DeWine was steadfast in his support for the heartbeat bill and signed the bill when it got to his desk.
Right.
Yeah, despite real opposition. So we give him real credit for that.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah, so, you know, and the same thing, the bill right before it became law, I think likely the same federal judge put a stay on it as well. So now on the heartbeat bill, though, that bill was written in such a way that we are very optimistic that it's going to be the bill that works its way all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Wow.
We're hopeful. I mean, that would be a quite an honor for the state of Ohio.
Sure.
If that were to be the bill that overturned Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
But these things take time. I know that we've appealed, but you know, it just takes a while for these things to work through the process.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And then most recently, Tony, we passed a bill actually last week in the House. It's now over to the Senate. I expect it'll go through the Senate rather quickly, and I'm certain that the governor will sign this into law. But it deals with adoption, okay? So I didn't mention, but the reason this is so near and dear to me, my mom was adopted, okay? Yeah. And so I never met my biological grandma, okay? My mom was born in Las Vegas, Nevada. My grandma that I knew adopted her when she was a baby and brought her back to Ohio, and that's how I ended up over in Seneca County.
Great.
But I'm very grateful, very, very grateful that my biological grandmother, who I've never met, made that decision to have my mom. Okay. Otherwise, obviously, we wouldn't be here if she chosen otherwise. But so this bill. John Cross from Hardin from Kenton was the sponsor of this bill. But what it does is it provides low interest loans for families who are trying to adopt children, and it's a rather expensive.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Anywhere from the numbers I've been told is somewhere between $10,000 to $50,000 to adopt a child.
Yeah.
And so what this does is the state of Ohio, through the treasurer's office, a family could apply for a low-interest loan to help defray or lower those costs for the families, so that the whole procedure, the whole adoption process is easier and more affordable. So any sort of legislation like that's going to make adoption easier, because you get a lot of times that the other side will argue that, well, maybe that mother just doesn't think that he or she can raise that child. Well, I understand that, and so what we're trying to do is, encourage, that thought process of, hey, look, I can give my child up for adoption, and there's people out there that will adopt my child. And we want to make it easier, that whole process to be easier.
Right from the beginning. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, we've taken a lot of your time today, and we appreciate it greatly. It's been great to introduce you to Putnam County.
Thank you.
We very much appreciate your leadership for Northwest Ohio.
Yeah.
I should mention as an aside, one of the things we've been working with Representative Riedel on, with Senator McCauley, with Representative Hoops, and with the other county chairs, is we're getting together regularly to work on common themes, common ideas, and common issues across Northwest Ohio. There's an awful lot of people in Putnam County that are a lot like people in Van Wert County, Defiance County, Paulding County, so on. And working together, I think, and I believe the COVID-19 situation is an example where voices from rural Ohio have taken the lead in trying to modify some of the things that are going on and are applying pressure in the right place. So, and then that's one of the reasons why we were so glad to have you at the forefront.
Yeah, you know, again, thanks for having me, Tony.
Sure.
But I always, and I say this to my peers in Columbus, and I'm proud of it. We live obviously in the greatest country in the world.
Indeed.
But we also live in the greatest state in the country.
Right.
Okay. And we live in the best part.
The best part of the state. There's no doubt.
We live, and I say it all the time, Northwest Ohio.
Yeah.
We live in a cocoon up here.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to get to Columbus to realize, whoa, you know,
it's a different world, isn't it?
Yeah, Ohio is not like all of it's not like Northwest Ohio, but I'm so thankful.
Yes.
I'm so thankful that I do live in Northwest Ohio, and the values that we live by in this part of Ohio. You know, it's where I want to be. I'm glad we were able to raise our children here, but we are so very blessed to live here, and I'm so very, very proud to represent the part of Ohio that I represent. And I'm very, you know, in that same way, I'm proud to be associated and represent Putnam County as well.
Oh, we appreciate it greatly.
Yep.
We do. And I should add, the people of Northwest Ohio are fortunate that we have people like you in the General Assembly. So that makes a huge difference. There are people in Ohio that are living behind enemy lines with folks from the other party. So we don't have that problem. So and that's
we're fortunate. We have some terrific legislators from Northwest Ohio. Northwest, Western Ohio, there's some terrific legislators.
Fantastic folks, and you're at the top of the list. So we appreciate it. Again, thanks, Craig. We'll look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Tony.
And enjoy our next conversation, and we'll see you soon.